Hello. Mouse graph button. This is what you're missing if you don't follow me on Twitch.
The back out as your backless.
The game hit 400
Oh, I'm sorry.
first ever Hell Dive difficulty mission. Most challenging difficulty.
CP! No.
Palworld!
Can you feel the changes in the wind of your game? Development.
He does. He can feel it. I mean, look at him. Palworld, for those of you living under a rock in the Marianas Trench on the moon, is an open world survival, crafting, automation, factory sim, monster collecting, dating sim, human trafficking, sex worker, gun simulator, JRPG, RPG role-playing game made by an indie company called Pocket Pair. A lot of people call it Pokemon with guns, but honestly, those people can gobble down a big old thick juicy.
Next question, I win.
Because there's just so many other games and influences that have been stuffed into a blender, shredded up, and squirted out into a bowl to make this masterpiece that I don't think you can really nail down one singular influence for it. Palworld takes influence from all kinds of games. Like, basically all of them. If a game has ever existed, Palworld's taken influence from it. Palworld's taken influence from games like Ark Survival, Rust, Pokemon, Breath of the Wild, RimWorld, Factorio, My Wildest Dreams, Dark Souls, Tamagotchi. Palworld is kind of just like a weird amalgamation of video games, like, in general. Like, I honestly think if you fed the word video games into an AI that can make video games, it'd look pretty close. And altogether, this weird menagerie of vastly different games and ideas all came together to make one of the most popular video games of all time, with one of the most meteoric rises that we've ever seen from an indie developer. See, the one thing that Palworld is doing that none of these other games are doing is numbers. Palworld is currently the most played game on Steam. I started writing this script a couple months ago, and at the time it was beating out Counter-Strike and Dota 2 on their home turf, Steam. And Palworld's in second place for peak concurrent players of all time on Steam. PUBG is the only game that has ever had more concurrent players online at one time. But PUBG only beats Palworld out by just a little measly 2 million more players on PUBG than Elden Ring, by the way, which once and for all proves that if there is a heaven, gamers aren't making it there. If you combine the numbers that Palworld is doing on Xbox and Steam, the total amount of people that have played this game reaches over 19 million. That means as of January 31st, a little over 0.2% of the entire population on planet Earth has played Palworld. Remarkable. I mean, that's just fucking crazy. 0.2 is almost 0.3. Just think about it. But what's possibly more interesting than Palworld's overwhelming success is its development process. Palworld's development is based AF. The development for Palworld might actually be one of the craziest stories I've ever heard from a video game developer. Well, the craziest thing in video game development in terms of this is one of the most successful games ever made, and it shouldn't work. Literally. Like, that's not clickbait or an exaggeration. This game literally shouldn't work on a technical level. Just a few examples of how wild the development got for this game. The CEO himself optimized the game in Unreal Engine 4 3 days before Palworld's release. He had never used Unreal Engine 4 in his life up until this point. Similarly, nobody else in the office had any experience in Unreal Engine 4 except for one singular, not plural, but singular motherfucker. And that's because the team at Pocket Pair had only ever used Unity. which is a more limited but easier to use game engine that the team had actual experience with. Unity's the engine that Palworld was originally being developed with at the beginning. But because they hired that one, not plural, but singular guy to the team sometime between mid to late development, they dumpstered nearly every bit of progress and development that they'd made up until that point in Unity and just switched to Unreal Engine 4. The engine that nobody in the office knew how to use. Nobody at Pocket Pair knew how to animate when they started this project. They didn't know how to animate when they started this project, which would be a lot like if I started writing scripts for YouTube videos without knowing how to read. Shut up. It'd be like if I wanted to get into hobbyist level skydiving, but like without arms. Wait a minute. Also, the guy who made all the gun animations for Palworld was a 20-year-old middle school dropout who worked part-time at a convenience store and made gun reload animations in his spare time at his parents' house. He also helped make this. Incredible. God, I love Japan. Side note, just wait a minute. Why is it that in basically all Japanese media, the only time you ever really see guns being used, it's this nightmare? So the CEO of Pocket Pair, Mizobi, I guess, actually put it into perspective for a rootin' tootin' gunslinging cowboy nerd like me. I never realized how much of a very, very Western thing guns are, specifically in media. Like, obviously, I knew we have more guns than, like, everybody, but I didn't realize how deep into Western culture guns actually were compared to like everybody else. In the developer blog that Mizobi wrote, link for that is in the description, probably. In the blog, he talked about how difficult it was to find somebody in Japan that could use Unity to accurately create gun animations, because apparently there's like nobody in Japan that does gun animations, according to Mizobi. Because Japan doesn't really do gun games, like hardly at all. There's not like a market for gun things over there. And Mizobi even came right out and said that the only reason there are guns in this game is to make Westerners like myself go, yeah! He even goes on to say that games like Resident Evil are huge anomalies in Japan, all because it's a popular Japanese game that has guns in it. And I think that's a pretty good representation on how the Eastern and Western perspectives differ. See, in Japan, it seems from this one guy's perspective that I'm using to just make massive assumptions about an entire race of people. In Japan, Resident Evil is a gun game that has monsters in it. But in the West, I think a lot of people would agree that Resident Evil is a monster game that happens to have guns in it. And I know that's a little bit of an exaggeration to make a point, because I know Resident Evil is like a meticulously crafted horror game that mainly focuses on making you pay attention to your surroundings when all you really want to do is not pay attention to your surroundings and get the fuck out of there, help police! But it really highlights the difference between these two perspectives. Like, I don't think anybody in the West was like, whoa, Resident Evil has guns in it. But in Japan, it was a bigger deal. And I think the difference between perspectives and guns trickles into a lot of Japanese media. Like, think of all the anime characters you've seen in video games and anime, and notice how a lot of them are wearing these big ass suits of armor with medieval weaponry instead of guns. Even in like Attack on Titan, the characters in that show saw these things and they were like, ooh, got it, melee weapons. And Attack on Titan is one of the most gun-havenist animes that I've ever seen. Now that I, Minister Mouse, have taken it upon myself to talk about geopolitics, Palworld. Let's talk about how Palworld succeeded. Like, at all, much less with flying colors that broke record numbers. Let's talk about it. I remember the first time I saw the trailer for Palworld back during the Summer Games Fest of 2023. This is when I saw the release date official announcement trailer, and you won't believe this, but I had opinions. I know, fucking crazy. Stick with me. And I remember it kind of went like at 3 seconds into the trailer, I thought, oh, another Breath of the Wild clone. At 10 seconds, I thought Eastern. And at 12 seconds, I thought trash. Well, actually, let's hear them out. I ended up walking away from that trailer just thinking this is another weird Eastern Tencent like gotcha game that'll be a meme for a day or two and then disappear into Splitgate level obscurity because Pokemon with guns sounds a lot like Halo with portals. By the way, you remember when the CEO went to Twitter and was like, we're gonna be the next Fortnite? Oh man, those were dark times for that guy, huh? So I didn't even think about this game until like 2 days before launch when my buddy texted me and asked me if I wanted to give Palworld a shot. And at the time, I was like, okay. And I have no way of proving this, but I honest to God believe that I had the same experience that like 3/4 of the 20 million people who ended up playing this game had. Like, I kind of feel like we were all like, LOL Pokemon with guns. That's funny. Anyways, back to Valorant, and ended up playing it because your buddy was like, you want to check it out? And you're like, sure. Or like you're just scrolling on Game Pass and you're like, why not? Like sort of like walking past, you know, like a strip club with a theme tonight. Like, well, I can't not see this. Then the game actually launched, and it launched on a weekend that I was too busy to play video games during, but I was keeping an eye on Palworld through Twitch because a couple of streamers that I follow they had started to play it, which sort of hyped me up for the game because I got to see that this game might actually be a little bit deeper than just Pokemon with guns. So I started to get hyped because of that. And also, I truly am little more than a mindless drone that just plays any game I see the popular kids over there playing. So this is when I cautiously bought tickets to the hype train. This is when I started watching a Palworld stream from a guy named MixelPlix on Twitch, who's normally my go-to guy for a new game when it comes out because me and him kind of share a brain cell when it comes to games. And he was saying really good things about the game when I joined the stream, which sort of like set in stone that I was at least going to try it. But then in his game, I saw that he had a base set up and had one of his pals doing automation work, and I closed the stream immediately because that's when I realized that this isn't just like a Pokemon game with guns. This
could be
better than Pokemon entirely. I really wasn't expecting to like Palworld better than Pokemon. Because as much as I like to see like this cool, weird, off-the-wall indie developer shit, it is really, really hard for them to compete with just a company with who shits money every day. Every day they wake up and dump billions of dollars into a toilet bowl and then flush it down into the Nintendo Switch. And I actually like Pokemon, unfortunately. It's Game Freak. I don't like Game Freak. Game Freak is the developers behind Pokemon, as if you fucking nerds didn't already know that. And Game Freak has not innovated or added anything new to the Pokemon series. And let's just see here. 28 fucking years. Now there's like articles talking about how they're going to be looking into Palworld for intellectual property infringements, which is an attempt by Game Freak to sue Pocket Pair and get Palworld shut down. Which, you know, like, hey, no, bad Game Freak. Bad. So while hype was ramping up for this game on Steam, YouTube, and Twitch, I was starting to get the itch for some Palworld. And the following Monday, on January 22nd, I decided that I was officially going to give it a go. I mean, I'd try anything once, right? So I got to my PC and I went to download it off of Steam, but then I realized that it cost money. So I went to steal it off of some Pakistani website like any reasonable person. Then on my way to my pirate ship, I happened to see that it was on Game Pass and I was like,
Hey, what do you know?
Palworld being on Game Pass shortly after launch actually took me by surprise because, you know, Steam is all about putting up half-baked, shitty, wiener-pinching games on their platform, but Xbox normally only offers their platform to games like of a higher quality. Well, but for real, Palworld being on Game Pass surprised me because it at least assured me that Palworld wasn't going to be like one of these. So I downloaded the game off of Game Pass and I booted it up, and within the first minute of playing it, I was confused. Because normally with any early access game, especially one with a premise as dumb as Pokemon with guns, at the 1 minute mark is normally when I realize that the game is dog shit, I got scammed, and I have to wait in the Steam support purgatory to see if I get my money back. But that hadn't happened yet in Palworld. I was actually having fun playing an early access video game. Yeah, I know, I nearly called the cops, but I was actually having a blast, even within like the first opening moments. The game was pretty and running smoothly. The progression system looked way deeper than I had originally thought, and I got to beat a sheep unconscious. Everything was just magical. Look at him go. This game was actually blowing the doors off of my expectations, and yeah, I am admittedly the exact target demographic for this game. My favorite types of games are open world survival base building games like Minecraft Grounded in Rust. I like progression games where I get to see my team's numbers go up and tickle the last synapses that I have in my brain. And I love automation games like RimWorld and Factorio, and having little Pokemon creatures running around doing your bidding, doing the automation for you, just adds even more flavor to it. Add all these together and just smash them up into one game and inject it right into my veins. That's what this game did. And yeah, before you ask, by the way, this sweatshop is up to civil rights codes. Look, I even have the Amazon suicide nets. Everyone's happy. But even disregarding my own taste in video games, I think most people probably came out of their first play session with Palworld pleasantly surprised. If you haven't played a lot of the early access bullshit Steam games, especially in the open world survival and crafting genre, I can't tell you how on the floor your expectations should be for these types of games. Like here's a visual representation of where my expectations are normally at.
Can I go home?
So I had a great time with Palworld. The world looked great. There was a lot of shit to do in it. This thing scared the shit out of me, and I personally couldn't find any glaring issues with the game. If you could please get down from there. But unfortunately, I didn't make it very far in this game because as of recently, my attention span just hasn't allowed me to sit and play single player games for very long. That and I had a kid born 10 days after Palworld's release. Get a job. So I didn't actually make it very far into this game. Around here-ish is as far as I got because I was too busy playing Rocket League and just sleeping any chance that I could get. But I was on Discord with some of my Discord buddies while they were playing it, and while I didn't have the energy to actually play the game, I did have enough energy to Google up articles about this game's success and berate my friends with facts about the game that I had just read, but I pretended that I had discovered on my own, which is, by the way, something that you should do to your friends if you're ever worried that they don't think you're cool and fun to be around. And while I was doing this, making friends and making my friends like me more by Googling stuff about Palworld while they were just trying to play Palworld, this is actually when I discovered how held together with spit and duct tape that this game truly is. See, I was surfing the web about this game because there was a glitch in the Xbox version of Palworld where you couldn't rename your player or your pals, which was unacceptable because now I'm forever stuck running around as the infamous player 228 or some shit, and I couldn't rename this thing to Mrs. Minister Mouse, so you can see why this would be a problem for me. So I was doing some browsing and I found an explanation as to what was going on there. See, according to the developers, they forgot. They just, it slipped their mind, I guess. That's what they said, by the way. That's not my words. They were like, nah, my bad. Whoops. This is around the time that the idea of making this video popped into my head because it's not often that a game dev just forgets something that big and simple, and it's significantly less often that they just come out and admit it. It's weird. It's very, very not normal for developers to do that ever, or just any company, really. Usually companies can make a fuck up on the scale of a small apocalypse, and then they just pretend that they meant to do it and everybody just forgets in like 3 weeks. And just as a small example that hasn't been just running through my brain nonstop or anything like that, it's like when Tucker Carlson lied to the public for a living throughout his entire career, causing unimaginable damage to American society, and then he goes on Theo Vaughn's podcast one time and just goes, shit, it be like that sometimes, homie, and now we're just back on the Tucker Carl Zen train. I'm in that boat too, by the way. Some have said that I am like weirdly easily influencnced by things. So no wonder that's what people and companies do all the time. All my man Tucker had to do was put in an upper decky and talk about fly fishing, and I'm like, shit, I can't stay mad at this motherfucker. So I found that article where Pocket Pair, they were just kind of like, oops. I forgot about the whole like rename function thing, and that's when I decided to start trying to deep dive into this game's development to see if I could find any more funny little quirks about the development, and oh boy, did I ever. As we've covered, Palworld was created by Pocket Pair, which is a Japanese company based out of Shinagawa, Tokyo. Palworld was originally created off of the bones of Pocket Pair's first project, Craftopia, or as I like to call it, Breath of the Wild. Walmart edition. Or as Wesley likes to call it, the best game ever. Fuck you, Wesley. Man, I fucking hate Wesley. All my homies hate Wesley. You know what? I did a small deep dive on this Wesley character, and it turns out that Wesley only has 8 friends, and one of them looks like this. And you know what? I'm confused, Wesley, because apparently Craftopia is the best game ever, but Palworld's the best game. And on top of all that shit, Wesley, he gave Starfield a smiley face, which is just blisteringly unacceptable. Wesley, we're gonna need you to figure your shit out and just get back to us when you're fixed. Craftopia. Walmart Breath of the Wild. Sorry, I blacked out there for a second. Which honestly, I was getting ready to roast this game because it borderline looks like just a Breath of the Wild asset flip, but honest to God, I think I would like this game almost just as much as I like Palworld now that I'm looking into it. Honestly, I think all I need in a game is open world base building automation. I'll just start throwing money at you like... Okay. Craftopia looks like it'd be a solid game for the price if you can just get past all the stock assets and plagiarism. God damn it, is that Fortnite? It's pretty clear that Palworld's just built off of the bones of this game. Everything from the graphics to the what if we just crammed 57 video games into one game design principle.
You could have games, unlimited games. But one game.
Which this quality of game is honestly understandable when you learn that Craftopia was being made by 4, not 5, but 4 dudes. A game made for dudes by 4 dudes. They're also making anime Hollow Knight with 4-player co-op with a hat mechanic where you can take over the bodies of enemies and use those enemies to do tasks around the base that you build. And you know what? I'm starting to fuck heavy with these guys. They have a real, what if we make your game, but better kind of vibe that intrigues the hoes. I'm hoes. So Craftopia was made by a team of 4 dudes at Pocket Pair who only had a total of 10 employees at the company at the time of the game's early access release. Mizobi, the CEO of Pocket Pair, stated that he gathered a pretty significant amount of knowledge of the survival crafting genre through the development process of Craftopia. And I'm assuming he just learned a lot about the overall design of the genre and learned some stuff about the optimization process, because for the most part, they didn't make hardly anything for Craftopia. The CEO himself said that they mainly just bought and imported pre-made assets for Craftopia. And you can even kind of tell that this is the case just from the trailer of Craftopia, just by how there's a straight up Breath of the Wild ass moblin in the trailer, 2 cuts away from default cow. This is the type of thing that you'd download for an animation class project in high school. So they didn't learn much about creating 3D models or actually animating anything from the development of Craftopia, which if you're completely unfamiliar with how 3D animations work, that probably won't make sense, because I mean, I can see the damn thing right there and it's moving, ain't it? That's what I sounded like 5 minutes ago before I Googled how animation works. I had to Google how animations work because apparently I found out that Pocket Pair didn't animate anything in Craftopia, but their game be animated, so what the deal? Here's the deal. Apparently you can buy animations and you can buy character models, and then you can just slap those animations onto those character models and bing bang boom, you're a fucking animator now. This game shit's easy. I don't know what these nerds at AAA game studios are always bitching about. For an example of this, what I'm talking about, I'm sure that a lot of you have seen examples of this in the wild. You know that animation of Thanos just throwing it back? I would bet that you've seen an alarming amount of other characters throwing it back in the exact same way, like down to the keyframe. This animation became a meme a while ago, and people were just slapping it on anything they could, like Shrek, Thanos, SpongeBob, Obama. Shit was everywhere. I even noticed it in an actual music video the other day. And I bet you didn't think anybody would notice that shit, but I tell you what, nothing gets past me. So when it came to Palworld's development, the team at Pocket Pair had a lot of catching up to do to make their own 3D models and animations. The team behind Palworld originally only kicked off development with 4 people. They had expected the game to launch in early access in like a year. Then that year passed and they had to hire another 10 people to help with development. Then another year had passed with no finish line for the game in sight. They had to hire another 20 employees. By the 3rd year of development, 2 years after they thought their original ETA for the game, they had to hire 10 more employees to try and help steer the ship that they were driving away from the rocks that they were steamrolling right towards. And a bulk majority of these employees were just 3D artists, world developers, and a couple skilled animators. Palworld took 2 more years and a significantly larger team than they had originally expected to get the game out. I mean, for God's sake, when Pocket Pair started development for Palworld, they didn't even know how to make rigs. Fucking idiots, am I right? Don't even know how to make a rig type having ass. I mean, if there is one thing that I hear people say all the time, it is that this is the type of guy who knows what a rig is. I have no fucking idea what a rig is. I had no idea. So according to everybody that I saw on the thread about Palworld's development, rigs are a big deal. Everybody I saw in the comments of that thread was just, "Whoa, holy shit, can you believe they didn't even know what rigs are?" And I was sitting there like, "Whoa, yeah, whoa, fucking imagine." If I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. I'm sure you will, because I'm gonna be flying by the seat of my pants trying to explain what a rig is that I just read off of Google like 20 minutes ago. For some context, I have about 20 to 25 minutes of experience on Blender, so I'm gonna try to attempt to explain it, because I couldn't find any quotes or information about exactly what they're talking about when the CEO was saying like, we don't know what rigs are. So I'm gonna I Googled it and I'm gonna try to put it in my own words and shit it out in a video. Just comment, rate, and subscribe. When you make a 3D model that you're planning to animate, what you need to do is make the 3D model. Real mind-blowing stuff here. You make the 3D model, which is where you design your character, give it colors, make it all pretty and stuff. But after you complete the model, you can't just hop into animating it right away. You silly fucking goose. You have to rig the model with something that looks like this. You can think of these things as the bones of the 3D model. And once you've put all the bones inside of your 3D model, it is officially rigged to be animated. So now if you want to move the arm of your 3D model, you don't want to move the actual model's arm because you would fuck it up. You would mess the 3D model's mesh up if you tried to do that. This is apparently what a mesh is according to Google. So the way that you would actually want to move the model's arm is by moving the bones that you rigged inside of your 3D model's mesh. And that is generally what a mesh is. That process of putting bones in your 3D model and rigging your character is unironically something that you would learn within 5 minutes of every single 3D animation tutorial that you could possibly find on YouTube or anywhere else on the internet. If this is what they meant by not knowing what a rig is, then it's truly incredible that this game was ever finished. And they needed to start hustling. If this is what they meant and they're starting to square one, they needed to hustle, especially by the end of the game's development. I mean, it's not like they just had like an unlimited budget to keep working on this game forever. Right? Well, let's read a quote from the CEO, Mizobi himself. The budget limit is initially until the balance in your bank account reaches 0. When it reaches 0, you can borrow money. In that case, do you need to manage your budget? No. All you have to do is borrow money or release money just before the company goes bankrupt and your account balance drops to 0. So for the time being, I decided to keep making it without worrying about the budget. We want to complete it as soon as possible, so let's just hire a lot of people. In layman's terms, he said, how could I run out of money? I'd just borrow more money. Dumbass. This is what we in the financial industry refer to as the Chad borrowing plan. Borrow as much money as a bank will physically let you run away with, spend all of it, borrow more. Infinite money glitch. Chad borrower. Virgin investor. The choice between these two is yours, but one thing about this sumbitch, he fucks. Mizobi even said something along the lines of hiring somebody to manage their budget was literally not worth the money in the budget to do so. Palworld's development was unironically the biggest example of fuck it, we ball out development that we've ever seen. This game cost $6.6 million to make. That's almost $7 million. You're welcome. And by the way, they don't actually know for sure that this number is correct. $6.6 million was just their best guess based off of the spent profits of their last game, Craftopia. So Mizobi, he just kind of like eyeballed this number based off of how empty his bank account was by the end of Palworld's development. I'm not convinced that he actually knows what money is. Budget literally wasn't an issue for the CEO of Pocket Pair. Well, it ended up not being an issue because the game was a wild success, but if it wasn't a wild success, it would have left him and his family and his family's family in blistering financial ruin for generations to come. But it ended up just not being an issue. So, results are results. So obviously, with a Giga Chad madman that theoretically has an unlimited budget at the wheel of your company, you'd expect that he'd only hire the most elite super soldier game developers that were possibly available to work on Palworld. What if I told you he did the opposite? We've already covered how the main animator for guns and some other stuff was a guy responsible for this hate crime, and nobody in the office knew how to, animate and shit like that. So obviously we weren't really dealing with SEAL Team 6 or nothing over here. Even the guy that ended up making most of the actual PALs himself had been declined from working at the company before. Twice. But then Mizobi tried to make one of the PALs himself because, that would save him money, and God knows if there is one thing we should all take away from the story, as we've already covered, Mizobi was only about fiscal responsibility while he was making Palworld, and it only took him 1 month to make a PAL. And I mean, that's not like the worst pace in the world. I mean, it would have only took him like 100 months to just create the base models for the characters of the game. Not to mention the animations, the coding, the background, the water, the trees, the grass, the ground, the dirt, the enemies, the castles, the buildings. So at that point, Mizobi saw that the guy who he had declined previously from working at the company had applied for a job at Pocket Pair again over Twitter. And Mizobi was finally like, fuck it, come on in here, you little scamp. We're making video games here. Go make a fox that I want to do illegal things to, and I'll give you money. Do it twice and I'll give you a raise. By the way, I'm just assuming that the guy he hired from Twitter was a guy. Actually, I'm assuming the gender of literally everybody in the story except for the CEO himself. The development blog that I'm getting the bulk majority of my information from was obviously like written in Japanese and then shittily translated to English. And the Japanese are radically either more or less woke than us here in the States. And I'm not actually sure which one it is. Because from the translation, they either don't give no jumping fucks about no goddamn pronouns, or they're so progressive that everybody is any pronoun at any time because we're just all one. We're just all one people, man. We're all connected. And I say this because in the blog, every pronoun in this article is randomized. Mizobi, from the translation, refers to himself as a she and refers to she's as an I and they's as hims and hims as me's and z and zer and furrykin. Every pronoun in the entire article is randomized to a comical degree. He will change pronouns while referring to the same person mid-sentence. And I think this just has to be a translation thing. That or their society would have collapsed thousands of years ago. This has zero relevance to literally anything about the development of this game. I just needed to inflict the pain that I felt from reading this nightmare onto unsuspecting strangers on the internet. Thanks for watching, comment, rate, and subscribe. The big three things that I've covered so far in this video at like the 30-40 minute mark, I have got to start working on speeding this shit up. Big three things that I've covered so far are the budget or lack thereof, or just the borderline resentful view on money that Mizobi had during the development. The main animator for the guns being a 20-year-old middle school dropout who worked at a convenience store in Hokkaido backwater nowhere. He was also a fan of hate crimes on the side. And one of the main designers for PALs being somebody who has previously denied a job at Pocket Pair twice. These make up 3 of the 6 miracles that Mizobi said had to happen to make Palworld a completed and successful project. Or at least a successful project. Completed. Yeah, I mean, you know. My favorite miracle so far and just in general is the budget part. Just the total disregard for money that Mizobi had is hilarious to me. He's even quoted as to saying, "You can't make an interesting game with money." And I mean, I don't even think he's necessarily wrong, but I just think yeet might have been Pocket Pair's mission statement while making this game. And in second place for my favorite miracles during this project is something that we're going to cover right now. And that miracle is how they at Pocket Pair had half of this game finished in Unity and then they threw it in the garbage. And the reason they did that was just to switch from Unity to Unreal Engine 4. Keep in mind, when they were creating the game in Unity, they were purchasing all of the 3D models and the animations for those 3D models. So that means not only did they throw out half of the progress that they made on this game, they also just fired all of the money that they spent on those assets out of a cannon and into a volcano just to switch over to Unreal Engine 4, a game engine that literally nobody in the office that a game engine that literally nobody in the office had any experience with, all because one guy asked Mizobi over an email to switch to Unreal Engine 4. That guy's name is Matsutani. I don't know how to pronounce it. I'm not gonna look it up, but I apologize in advance because that is how I'm gonna be handling names from now on. Poorly is. Mr. Matsutani was a video game industry veteran. He had 10 years of experience in Unreal Engine 4, and he told Mizobi that he would help him create Palworld as long as they completely switched to Unreal Engine 4 from Unity. And Mizobi, being Mizobi, was like, yeah, dude, fuck it, let's go all out with our balls out, bro. We're in more of like a sink or swim type of situation here, so let's get them knees to chest, bitch. Let's get this thing moving. So Mizobi decided to risk his, life, basically, on a Hail Mary that this Matsutani feller could train the other employees at Pocket Pair in Unreal Engine 4. Pocket Pair only had 2 engineers at the time working on Palworld, and they both used Unity exclusively. So Mr. Matsutani trained these guys in Unreal Engine 4 on the job, but they realized that this still wouldn't be enough, so they had to hire even more engineers. But, there's one small problem. There's a reason that a lot of smaller studios end up using Unity. Unity is significantly easier to use than Unreal Engine 4. Unity's more of an engine that's easier to get into, but it's limited a little bit at higher levels. So think about what that does to a workforce from Mizobi's perspective. Mizobi now needs to hire a bunch of engineers that work with Unreal Engine 4, but those engineers are harder to come by because since those engineers have more experience with a more advanced game engine, those engineers are probably already employed by a higher-end studio. Pocket Pair was not a higher-end studio, so therefore, the only engineering talent that Mizobi could find were people who were only fluent in Unity, not Unreal Engine. So Mizobi ended up hiring 5 more Unity engineers for Palworld, and Matsutani had to just train every single one of them on the fly, while also being the main engineer for Palworld. Jesus Christ. Imagine you had just borrowed over $6 million to make a rocket ship, and then you had to teach 7 college dropouts on what a screwdriver is before they could start to help you build the rocket ship. That's what Matsutani had to do to make Palworld happen. That doesn't even cover the art side. I mean, the absolute logistical hellscape of the art side. Creating 100 pals with their own unique art, rigs, and animations is a Herculean task that I literally wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, much less a random indie dev in Japan. Because let's just break this down on what it takes to do 1 pal and then multiply that by 137. First, you have to model your pal. I have no industry knowledge on how long it takes to do this, but I do have the internet, so I'm basically a resident expert on the subject. Mizobi originally tried to do this himself with little to no prior experience in 3D modeling, because again, they bought all their 3D model assets in their prior projects. And it took Mizobi 1 month to make 1 pal. Not ideal. At this pace, it would take Mizobi only 11 years to make just 137 3D models for the pals in Palworld, which, to be fair, 11 years is better than 12. but not as good as 10. And that only covers the 3D models. That doesn't even cover rigging the 3D model with bones or animating it to run, jump, eat, sleep, mine, attack. You get the point. So obviously he had to hire help for this process. That or finish working on Palworld, like, I mean, in heaven, because he would be fucking dead before he got this thing put out. Or, I mean, the Japanese version of heaven, which is just Crunchyroll, I think. So that's what he did. He hired help, quite a bit of it, actually. By the end of the development process for this game, he had quintupled his staff at Pocket Pair. So now with the upgraded staff, we can sort of compare the character creating process of Pocket Pair to that of a more industry standard process. The time it would take to make a 3D model character is obviously something you would have to measure on more of a case-to-case basis, and the estimations for this process are more all over the place than fucking zits on prom night. But with some mild amount of accuracy, we can assume that the modeling process for one PAL would be about 2 days based on industry standards. This is the culmination of 2 days of hard work. Behold its majesty. And that's just for the mesh. 2 days is what it takes to make this thing's juicy skin. That doesn't include rigging it up and animating it or coding it or any of that shit. That's just to make it look pretty. Mizobi calculated that it would take about 20 motions or animations to have a PAL ready to be successfully released out into the wild of Palworld. And he said one motion would take about 1 day to animate. And by motion, what I mean is like a mining cycle or like cutting down a tree cycle or a walking cycle. I think that's what he means by motion. So he did the math, and about 100 PALs times about 20 motions would take about 2,000 days to make, which is about 5 years for just the PALs. And by the way, that's 5 years assuming that you have people in the office that knew how to animate. So you can see how having to make 2,000 animations without knowing how to fucking animate could be like a small problem. But thankfully, a hero came in to save the day for Pocket Pair and Palworld. A hero by the name of Adachi-san. I don't know what san means or what context to use it in, so Adachi-san is just my best guess. If only there was some kind of way for me to look it up. Adachi Sand is an industry veteran when it comes to motion and animation. Adachi got into contact with Mizobi and wanted to see how Craftopia was made and how Palworld is being made. And once Adachi saw how the animations were being made at Pocket Pair, he apparently looked at Mizobi and was like,
You serious?
"You serious?" And the biggest thing that stuck out to Adachi was Pocket Pair wasn't using the rigs. Apparently he asked Mizobi like, "Hey, buddy, where are the rigs?" To which Mizobi responded, "The who?" Adachi taught Mizobi and the team how to use rigs to animate their PALs, which sped the animation process up tremendously, according to Mizobi. Mizobi compared making 3D animations for his PALs to building the pyramids without modern equipment, which would be impossible to do in modern day. Which is kind of a funny quote to me because it tacitly implies that Mizobi was kind of like, well, I mean, I could do it with a couple slaves. Real quick, upon a 5-second Google search, I found out that the pyramids actually weren't built by slaves. It was actually just built by fucking hardworking Egyptians. I don't know why. I don't even know why I thought it was built by slaves, but according to the fucking little Google search I did, there are like clear records of signed workers' contracts between employee and employer on the project. It apparently, even when they were making the pyramids, there were like protests due to contract violation because the workers weren't getting the agreed upon amount of supplies, safety regulations, and beer. Turns out I had more in common with the ancient Egyptians than I ever thought possible, which is a bummer because it means that this quote isn't as funny as I originally thought, but I'm leaving it in because I still think it's funny. One thing about the videos on this channel, historical accuracies will be tossed in the garbage for one singular, mildly entertaining joke. Back to Palworld, I'm sorry. Mr. Adachi was also surprised by the sheer lack of people Mizobi had working on the PAL's animations. All in all, Mr. Adachi was surprised by the sheer lack of planning in general at Pocket Pair, but it stated that he joined Pocket Pair because he wanted to see new ways to make things, and with that he did. He got to see how to make things poorly. So Adachi cleaned up the entire animation development process and the department in general at Pocket Pair, and they were able to successfully rig and animate 137 PALs before launch. Which, by the way, I should mention that you can't reuse the same rig for different PALs normally. Like, you can't use the bones of this sheep to animate this abomination. I mean, you technically can, but that's how you get animations like this.
It can't get any worse.
So Adachi streamlined the rigging and animation process, and according to Mizobi and just general common sense, Palworld would not have been possible without Adachi-san. Yeah, Adachi Sam's Club. And after all that, at that point in the development, the only thing they had to do was optimize the game and then just hit the release into early access button that's in every small studio in Japan. So I mean, obviously Mizobi hired like a small team of game optimizers to fix most of the bugs and optimize the game in a neat and organized fashion, right? I mean, if you think the final touches of this game were going to be handled in a strictly prim and proper and professional way, then I have failed at my job to explain how wet and wild the development for this game has been so far. What actually happened with the optimization process of this game was Mizobi was just kind of like taking a glance at the game and was like, I mean, hell, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And just 3 days before the game's launch, Mizobi himself finished the optimization process of this game. Did you know the most popular illegal drug in Japan is meth? That doesn't have any relevance to anything. I just thought you should know. So Mizobi optimized the game all by his lonesome and launched the game 3 days later. And honestly, you wouldn't even be able to tell the optimization for this game was just done by one guy. All things considered, and I do mean all things, this game runs fantastically for a game that's held together by Elmer's glue and a can-do attitude. The fact that this game turned out in as good of a state that it actually is mind-blowing. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Mizobi and Pocket Pair in general had no idea what this game was going to turn out to be. I mean, when you have like 38 unqualified dudes crammed into an office and your entire design principle for the game you're making is just to stuff like 100 other different games into a blender and see what ends up squirting out the other side, the results of what Palworld was going to end up being was far from set in stone. I don't think they had any idea of what Palworld was even going to look like, much less that it was going to be like an interesting game. So I think it's very fair for Mizobi to say that the final miracle of Palworld's development is that it ended up being pretty sick.
Good job!
Now, I've made it seem like the guys at Pocket Pair are just a bunch of fucking cavemen banging rocks together that Mr. Magoo'd their way into making a halfway functional game. That's more for just comedy points. The guys over at Pocket Pair are far from stupid. They're like the opposite of stupid, which is something, I don't know. And obviously, Mizobi has a pretty incredible innate sense of leadership to be able to cram 40 nerds into a room and get them to work on this Hail Mary of a video game and somehow pull it off. I'm in the gamer chair, shit's serious now. And obviously, he has a pretty incredible innate sense of leadership to be able to cram 40 nerds into a room and get them to work on this Hail Mary of a video game and somehow pull it off. What they've done here with Palworld is nothing short of incredible, and I don't mean to discredit that at all by trying to be funny and saying these guys just like accidentally pulled off the impossible through no skill of their own. See, that's my game plan, just to slip and fall into success. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for a wet spot in a McDonald's with no wet floor sign, just rolling my ankle into the good life. As far as the future goes for Palworld, we kinda don't know. I mean, obviously, since I wrote the script, we begin updates like this one. I don't know how many updates there have been. I'm just saying this one as many times as I can. Covering my bases. No. Mizobi, at the time of doing the dev blog, said that Palworld is roughly around 60% finished, which is a number I kind of think he just kind of like threw out there before he realized that this game was gonna bang and then go on to be picked up by one of the biggest software juggernauts on the planet. If I had to guess, I'd probably say that this game will turn out to be like a live service-ish type of game that sort of just perpetually churns out updates and new features with new pals and shit like that. If not that, then maybe Palworld will just end up being the beta test for Palworld 2 or something like that. I don't know. I drive a little truck around in circles for a living, so just keep that in mind. Nothing here is well researched, or like I've never even accidentally known what I was talking about, so anything could happen. But I do think Palworld probably isn't a game that Mizobi makes and then just wipes his hands of it and then goes on to the next project. If I'm wrong, then I mean that's about par for the course, but I'd be genuinely surprised because I don't know much about how shit works in life in general, but what I do know is that this line is not allowed to go down.
And if you're sitting here like, that can't be how the world works.
And for Pocket Pair, Palworld is probably the path of least resistance to make this line go up. And as far as the future of Palworld goes that Mizobi has talked about, he wants to perfect the game. He wants to implement PvP and figure out how much new content they want to release for Palworld. I think this is where the Microsoft backing is going to play a huge part in Palworld's future, and he also wants to add new functions to the game. As far as functions go, I think this means like what pals can do, their abilities, or something like new factories, base building, or automation mechanics, I think. And I think PvP is what will give this game legs for the long term. Right now, players don't really have a reason to play Palworld for longer than just completing the content that's out right now. And Pocket Pair knows this, but unlike most developers, Pocket Pair is actually like very understanding of this. This tweet was put out by Bucky. You know, Bucky. The tweet basically encourages players to not feel obligated to just play Palworld. It says, just go out and play all sorts of other games, since there's so many good games out right now. Basically saying like, hey, don't worry about us. We're working on stuff for you. Just come back when you're ready, which is weird. Imagine like Bungie saying that. Like, could you imagine? Bungie right now would be more likely to hold your firstborn child hostage until you complete your stupid fucking dailies. I'm excited to see the future of this game because I really don't know where it's going. Palworld is a fantastic base for like 3 different games. It could be a really engaging PvP game. They could focus on automation and crafting like Factorio or Satisfactory. They could double down on just adding more areas and focusing on the world like Tim. You know what? Actually, we stay away from this one. And to be honest, I'm mostly excited for the potential PvP game mode. But PvP would admittedly be the hardest one to implement according to Mizobi and just general critical thinking, because since this game is like 10 different games, just right off the bat, it's not entirely obvious which game they should model their PvP after. They could do PvP like Rust, where you raid other people's bases. They could do an auto chess thing like Teamfight Tactics, just replace these fucking losers with pals. They could do a third-person shooter where you and another player go into an arena with your pals and just shoot it out. Or they could do turn-based combat like Pokemon if there is no god. Now, Mizobi's already said that he's probably not going to do the Rust style PvP where you invade people's worlds and raid their base, which I think is a good decision, because if somebody came in and ruined my shit and I had to start over from scratch, I would go ahead and fuck around and be like, click, bye-bye, click, whoopsie daisy. Because I think it'd be worse to start over in Palworld than it would be to start over in Rust. Rust is kind of built around like snowballing quickly into success and then restarting. Palworld, on the other hand, is heavily a progression-based game. Like in Rust, I can get a pretty good base going in like 3 hours of in-game time, which with a full-time job and shit would take me like 2 days, which isn't a big deal. Now, granted, I'm worse at Palworld than I am at Rust, and I don't know how to like cheese the game yet, but it took me like a week or so just to get this shit up and running. So starting over in Palworld from scratch would just, really chap my khakis, I tell you what. Now, I could see this version of PvP being done in Palworld in a way where if you raid somebody's base, maybe your base doesn't just get trashed, maybe you just lose like a lot of resources or something. Like if somebody comes in and beats your ass, maybe you lose like a berry garden here and there and some rocks or something, but you don't have to like start over all the way from scratch like you do in Rust. But I still think this would be a hard thing to implement in the game, because Palworld isn't really built for a shared PvPvE type world thing in the first place. Like if you could join like servers with other people, it really wouldn't work out just because of the world design and shit. So it'd have to be an invasion type of system where you invade somebody's world who has PvP enabled and then battle it out like Dark Souls. But even with this type of system, it'd still be crazy difficult to implement for, reasons stated earlier. According to the dev blog, one of the hardest things to develop is server-side pals pals that operate autonomously in a customizable 3D environment. In poo-poo brain terms, it's hard to make pal do thing in certain area where you can theoretically craft a Hindu temple in the middle of said area. So imagine that in a PvP battle around somebody's base, imagine that not only do your pals have to figure out how to navigate everything in your base, but also your enemy's pals have to figure out how to navigate said base. And it'd have to be in a fluid way that makes combat feel fun and engaging. And you may be thinking, like, games like Minecraft don't seem to have a problem to have mobs exist in a shared world and navigate through even more complex environments than Palworld. And here's the thing, that's true. But Mojang have been working on mob pathing in Minecraft for 13 fucking years. And they only recently got, like, kinda good at it. Rust has had problems with its mobs for nearly an equivalent amount of time, and here's how tough getting that right is. My go-to way of getting away from boars to this day when I don't have any weapons in game is to just wait until it gets stuck in a rock. So I think this would be like an awkward, cumbersome mess of a PvP idea, even implemented in the best, most realistic, easiest way possible. The PvP modes that I'm hoping for are the third-person arena shooter combat with pals or auto chess. I'm equally good with both of these things, or a turn-based combat like Pokemon, but like innovate, do something different, because the third-person shooter PvP would be just a wild clusterfuck, and people would be making sniper montages with 30 seconds from Mars blasting in your ear at 360p, and I need that shit directly into my veins. But I also think the Palworld could potentially be like the first auto chess game that's fun. Because imagine an auto chess game where instead of using characters from League of Legends, your characters would be your pals, and you could interact with your pals, and there would be an actual, like, you know, game attached to your auto chess game. Because, I mean, for all of its flaws, I think that this is something that Pokemon gets right. That felt weird to say. I actually almost threw up. The thing I like about Pokemon is that you get to build your team within the world itself, and then you battle them against people who have done the same thing. I know this concept isn't anything like mind-blowing, but it definitely makes you feel a bit more connected to your team. It's like the difference between building a custom team from scratch within the actual game itself and just playing Pokemon Showdown, where you can just squirt any kind of Pokemon team you can possibly imagine onto your screen. I mean, it's still fun, but it doesn't feel the same, you know? I think this could be what the auto chess game mode in Palworld looks like. Like an auto chess, but it's your auto chess made with love and Cheeto fingers. I hope that explanation made sense. If not, you know what, fuck, and just Palworld Gears of War. And as far as the new functions go, I would assume that just means filling the world with, like, new mechanics. New mechanics, places to go, things to see, and what have you. The new mechanics part would be the thing that I'm most interested in. As just a general thing about me, I care way more about game mechanics that I can, like, interact with, way more than just cool things that happen in the world. For example, if they focused on the automation factor of this game and just doubled down on the small numbers turn into big numbers, and they turn into even bigger numbers, I would melt into a blistering autistic trance that would ruin my life for many of real life days. But if they add, like, just a city where you can do stuff in, and I'd walk around and be like, I got a Jamba Juice. All right, we'll see you later. And that's basically all we know about the future plans of Palworld for now. I'm really rooting for this game and these developers. I mean, hopefully they don't pull a Splitgate and... Honestly, in my opinion, I think they're already kind of one step ahead of the Splitgate guys. I think one of the most unfortunate things I've ever seen in gaming news in general was when Splitgate got a bump like this for a month, and then the CEO of the company was like,
we're not shy about the fact that, like, we're trying to be the next Apex, or I'd even go as far as say the next Fortnite, but
Ah, we're the new Halo. This is the new Fortnite. I'm Katy Perry.
And then, I'm gonna be honest, Splitgate deserved better. But I will say the one thing the Splitgate does have going for it that Palworld doesn't is that Splitgate doesn't have the biggest media juggernaut throughout, like the course of human history breathing down its neck with a team of giga lawyers. Now this could be a bit of a setback, but I actually don't think that Game Freak or the Pokemon Company will actually do anything. And you can take my word for it because I'm a guy on the internet making a video and putting it on the internet. So basically, I'm a resident expert in literally anything I just choose to talk about. It's true. I mean, you actually get your PhD in everything with any purchase of a Shure SM7B. But here's the thing. Yes, the PAL designs are strikingly similar to old school Pokemon designs, but that's roughly where the similarities between Pokemon and Palworld kind of end. I mean, yeah, you can throw balls at them and everything, but this game has so much more in common with games like Ark that it's not even really comparable to a Pokemon game in a litigious way. I mean, can you do this in Pokemon? Yeah, I thought not. The Pokemon dudes announced that they'd be looking into intellectual property infringements, but I think it would take some real courtroom jujitsu to pull anything off against Palworld. That being said, the Pokemon dudes could probably put together a legal team of fucking 9th planet black belts, but I think that would be a bad look. So I don't think it's likely that Pokemon sues the pants off of Palworld and Mizobi, who doesn't care about money anyway, but I guess time will tell. If Pokemon hasn't done anything to Palworld by the time this video goes out, it's safe to say that they're probably not going to do anything. Leave in the comments which will come first, this video or the heat death of the universe. Leave it in the comments. So that's the story of Palworld's wild-ass development. I don't think the development of Palworld is the only time the development of a game has been this unorganized. I mean, even when I was looking into this story, I saw a lot of people comparing it to the development of Pokemon Red. So it can't be that uncommon for a new game to be made, on accident, basically. But what is pretty unique about the development of Palworld is how wildly transparent the CEO has been throughout the entire process. You would basically never see anything like this from a AAA developer. Even most indie developers wouldn't admit to the development of their game just being a long series of shit like, hey, we need more room in the budget for cocaine if we ever plan on this game actually being finished. But sir, we need to save money. What's that? What's what? Money. Oh God. So I definitely thought that this was a story worth telling. I mean, just the sheer amount of giggling I did while reading the interviews with this guy was enough for me to make a video about it. And it helps that Palworld is an extremely enjoyable game that hopefully has legs to stand on in the future. Unlike BattleBit. I mean, I hate to say I told you so, but I did. Not like y'all, not like the people watching this video. I mean like y'all as in the YouTubers who ruined my YouTube home screen with, this is the new Battlefield killer. How this one game is putting AAA developers to shame. And just people making videos like that, shut up. Those videos were doing numbers. Talking about the success of games like Palworld, Splitgate, and BattleBit, even if its temporary success has made me think about the way the gaming industry is headed in general. If you're watching this video, odds are you've probably heard about how the gaming industry is going to crash and how modern gaming is garbage. It's probably even crossed your YouTube homepage and your TikTok a couple times because doomsday videos are notoriously easy to spread like wildfire. Bad news is the way to get people to watch your shit, hence like media in general. But games like these and this new wave of games like Helldivers, Valheim, Lies of P, Nightingale, kinda, and shit like that have all but confirmed to me that the video game industry isn't dying, it's changing. For better or worse, that's up to you. But I choose to believe it's for the better. It feels like AAA games have stagnated to the point that they're finally being shoved into nursing homes by smaller devs like these guys. Smaller devs with more passion for their games and a blistering misunderstanding of how money works are finally to the point where you'll basically always see their games up on the charts with your Assassin's Creed's AAA type ass game beats. And it's been like this for a while. Even back in the day when I was playing Modern Warfare 2, there were already games like Minecraft, H1Z1, DayZ, and shit rubbing shoulders next to the AAA games like Modern Warfare 2. But nowadays, it seems like there's a new one of these like every other month bucking up to AAA studios. Now, I don't think the AAA market is going anywhere. These companies just have too many resources to pour into their games and marketing. Even the most dog shit AAA game has the chance to come out as passable just by the money they're able to throw at it. And AAA devs will always still have a just rock solid iron grasp on the ball sack of casual gamers. And it's understandable because here's the thing. AAA games are like a meal from McDonald's. You know exactly what you're gonna get from McDonald's unless they fuck up your order. Every single time you go to McDonald's, you know you're getting McDonald's. Even if they fuck up your order, it's still McDonald's. You're used to it. You don't have to think about it. It's on your way home, and you don't run the risk of wasting your money on trying something new. Now, that new diner down the street looks pretty interesting, but none of your friends have ever been inside of it, and you don't really know what's on the menu, and what the fuck do you even do if they don't have chicken tenders on the menu. For casual gamers, for most casual gamers, spending their money on a game that they don't really even understand is basically out of the question, because why would I spend 30, 40, 60 bucks on something that I don't even understand when McDonald's is, I mean, it's clearly right there. I can see it. At this point, basically everybody knows what an Assassin's Creed is. Everybody knows what a Call of Duty is. You're not gambling with whether or not you'll like something when you buy these games. Even if it's bad, you still knew what you were gonna get. The quality is just like a little different year by year. And don't get me wrong, sometimes McDonald's is banging. I wouldn't consider myself a casual by any means. I'll try the local dive bar down the street, but I'm lying if I say that I don't stop at the local McDonald's from time to time. I even buy the McDonald's Battle Pass sometimes for literally no reason, because God knows I'm not going to finish it. Why would I? Ew. McDonald's isn't going anywhere. McDonald's is going to be here longer than your kids and your grandkids. McDonald's will be around long after you're already like well forgotten. Your great grandkids will be showing dumbass Facebook pictures of you to their kids, and their kids will be like, who is that and why is he so ugly, while they're on their way to McDonald's. But McDonald's will never surprise you. McDonald's isn't good for you. There's no passion behind McDonald's, and it'll never give you anything that is of higher quality than a McDonald's. But that diner down the street might. And as of recently, it seems, at least to me, that there are more and more little diners popping up around town, and they're getting bigger and more popular by the day. So food allegories aside, I must have been starving when I wrote this section of the video. I don't think the video game industry is dying. I think it's going through some changes. It might be good changes, it might be bad changes. It is changing. It just sort of depends on how you want to look at it, which is admittedly weird to watch. I mean, it's getting all zitty and their arms don't match their body proportions. Don't look, kids, it might bite you. But I think it'll normal out eventually. God willing. Like I said earlier, it's up to you to decide whether or not you think this shift is a good thing or a bad thing. I think it's a good thing because the new industry kind of panders to the best kind of gamers, me. Because if we spin the clock back 10 to 15 years, Jesus Christ. I started out eating McDonald's exclusively, but when I made the jump to PC, that's when everything changed for me. And PC gaming 10 to 15 years ago is a lot different than PC gaming now. There's a lot more similarities between PC gaming and console gaming now than there were back when I started on this adventure. I got a PC back in the day. AAA games became something that I only played for like brief moments between playing more like indie games. Like, yeah, I played Dying Light, Dishonored, Just Cause, and Borderlands in general, but 99% of my library on Steam are diner down the street type games. And I bought way too many of them. See, I've been into diner down the street games for a grip, and I think it's nice to see the industry finally take a turn more in that direction. And even with the AAA games that I liked in the past, the development for those games had way more in common with diner down the street type of games than AAA games nowadays. Like Valve, for example. Their whole business model, especially for back in the day when they actually, made video games. What Valve did, especially back in the day, was they would find a talented group of passionate nerds, modders usually, who had a good idea, and Valve would just give them money and say, here, make something that people will remember. And they did. Time and time again. And same with the old school Halo games. I mean, does it look like anybody in this video has ever seen a woman? Nope. That's how you know their shit's about to be fired. These dorks were wearing glasses and everything. That line's funny because when I wrote the script for this video, I didn't have glasses, but now I do, because I'm almost 30. Why am I doing this? This is the video game equivalent of walking into a Mexican restaurant and seeing everything on the menu is being cooked in aluminum foil. Shit's gonna change your life. So the moral of the story, I think, for Palworld and video game development in general is give nerds money to make games that connect with people, and it'll happen. Keep an eye out for modders and just people who look like this fucking guy, and that's probably where the magic is going to end up happening. And it's okay to like McDonald's, but these corporate games that are basically just made by a moneyball algorithm aren't hitting like they used to, and I think the public discourse around video games is sort of a symptom of that right now. And don't get me fucking started on Arby's. I see you, motherfucker. Arby's is the downfall of modern society as we know it. The only product that they have to sell is brain rot, and buddy, I'ma buy it. I'ma buy so much. Ooh, buddy, I'ma buy it. What the fuck was this video about?